So I'd like you to kind of start right there. How did God put this burden on your heart? And tell us a little bit about justice reform, if you will.
Absolutely. So the Justice Reform was the organization that was really just birthed here a few months ago, but it actually all started over a decade ago. And I remember this pivotal moment in my life. A lot of people haven't really heard of the topic of human trafficking, and there's a lot of different injustice issues that I believe that God is calling the church right now to be the hands and feet to. But particularly over a decade ago, I never heard of human or sex trafficking. And I went to an event. It was a conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and I went with a few friends. And it was a time in my life where I was just like, Lord, whatever you have for me, I'm ready. You know, I needed the encouragement of the Lord.
Dangerous prayers.
And yes. And so here I find myself at this conference, and all of a sudden the missionary from Thailand actually is on the stage, and she's just, as serious as a heart attack. And I'm like, what is this woman about, to talk about? And she just began to share her heart about how she no longer traveled to America to speak in churches or American events any longer, because she was presented with so many leaders and pastors telling her to keep her stories and her testimonies G-rated. And she said that she was offended by this as a missionary in the sex trafficking realm. She's like, there's nothing G-rated about this topic whatsoever. No. And so this church had given her the freedom to come and share what was taking place. And this woman began to share the most horrific stories I'd ever heard in my life. She was talking about 3-year-old little boys dressed up as girls with makeup on their face, standing in street corners, being sold for sex at 3 years old. She was telling stories about finding 6-month-old babies in trash cans that had been raped multiple times by full-grown men. And I remember this literally, I don't even know how to explain it, but this grief just came over me. And I remember falling to my knees and just beginning to weep. Nobody called an altar call. Nobody said, would you please get down on your knees? Would you cry? It was just, I fell to my face and I just began to cry out. And I don't know how much time had gone by, but I remember picking up at one point and the entire, thousands of people were on their faces. And there was just this mourning that was coming out, and people just began to throw money at her feet. That moment marked me because God opened my eyes to a realm I didn't know. And now that I knew I had to do something. And from that moment on, I began to pray, Lord, how can I make a difference in this trafficking realm? This is disgusting. It's horrific. This can't be true, but I'm finding out it is true. And so we have to do something about this. And so I was a runner, and I still like to run. And I go on a prayer run one day, and I'm running and talking to the Lord and everything. But honestly, that specific day, I just didn't feel like running. I just wanted to turn around, go home, walk. So I actually went to pause and stop to just walk back home. And at that moment, I heard this question: what would keep you running no matter what? And at that moment, when I heard that question, I had this flash vision. And of this vision, in this vision, there was a sea of thousands of runners. And I instantly just felt in my spirit, this was a marathon, it was a race. And so, but I noticed all of a sudden it zooms into this vision that instead of numbers on their front and on their back, it was faces. And then all of a sudden it zooms out again, and there's just a sea of faces, thousands of faces. And I knew in that moment that these were victims, these were children that had been victimized through sex trafficking. And so I went home and I shared it with my husband. We began to pray over the years of what God was calling us to do. And the first portion that he gave us was this justice run, where we're putting together a marathon and a 5K. We're doing our first one November 7th, 2021 in Fort Worth, Texas, our first marathon and 5K. All of the proceeds are going to be going towards building and running long-term restoration homes, which are these justice residences.